Hey Art Explorers, welcome to the studio. This is your October 2018 video and I'm going to dig on deep into a really fun technique, and this is one that I've not shared a lot online. I haven't shared it at all online, so you guys are getting it first. I've done it in a magazine, but other than that, it's not one I've seen around a lot either. And it's a really fun printing technique that adds a lot of texture to your work. Now, for this particular printing technique, what you need is some sort of texture, a texture plate, and something really convenient for that kind of thing is rubber stamps. Really easy to use rubber stamps, clear stamps, any of that kind of thing, and some form of watercolor paint as well. So let's dig on in and I'll show you how this works. So to get us started, I've actually taped down my watercolour to just a wooden board, just to keep it in place. I'm just going to put a colour wash down. I'm going to start with a light colour wash, and because it will just be the best way to show you how this technique works. And it doesn't have to be particularly accurate or anything like that, because we're just demoing, and when you come to do this you can have a good old play with it and you tweak it and get it working in exactly how you want it to work. So I want that to be fairly wet, and I want it to stay fairly wet too, because I need enough time to add colour to my stamp. So for my stamp I'm going to go with blue. Quite sort of zigzaggy onto the stamp. It's not going to be a perfect, if you've ever done this you know it kind of beads up and things like that, but again we're just demoing so it doesn't really matter, and you can kind of find out by just doing it how much paint you need to put on to your stamp to get the kind of look that you want to get. So this is still wet, my wash is still wet, my stamp is wet, and I'm going to place it on the block, and then I'm going to place a weight over the block, and then we're going to wait for 30 minutes. Okay, whilst we're waiting for that to develop, I think I'm going to experiment with a couple of other things as well. Now, I've not tried this before, so let's see how this works. What I want to do is find out if we can also use our different kind of markers, our watercolour markers as well. So let's have a go and see if that will work. So I've got a slightly bigger stamp for this one, so I need a bigger area. And I'm going to go with the paint again, just because it will make it easier to have a nice damp surface. And I need it to be reasonably big for this stamp. You kind of do have to work a little bit quicker so that you don't, your paint doesn't dry. Okay, that will probably do for what we want. And then I'm just going to directly put, you see that sometimes it's a little bit easier to use your pens on your stamps than using a brush. And I'll put lids on, I'll put the lids on in a minute, but I kind of want to get this working quite fast. So let's go with it. And that goes on quite nicely, doesn't it? Right, that should be enough for us to see if that's going to work. And that's, surface is still wet, stamp is still wet, place it on, and again I want to put a weight on, and we'll keep that down for 30 minutes as well, and I might put an extra weight on that. And I've got one more stamp that I want to demonstrate, and this is just to show that you don't have to just use rubber stamps, you can use your clear stamps for this particular printing technique as well. So let's give that a quick go too, and then we can go and have a cup of tea and come back in 30 minutes time or so. Let me put a little bit more pigment down on that. There we go. I will use a little bit of, oops, that's quite a lot of pigment. There we go, let's use that on there and then try, there we go, pen. Now the trick is going to be trying to remember where we put all of the different things. Let's have a look at how these work together. And I'm not sure if I'm getting enough colour on this. Oh, yeah, there we go. So, now you can do other things as well, like if you're worried that the paint has dried on your stamp, if it's a particularly big stamp, you can always spritz it with water, but we're just going to go straight on and go with a couple of weights. Okay, we're all ready, so see you in half an hour. Right then gang, shall we have a look, see what's happened? So I'll do it in the order that I put them on and very carefully so that I don't knock any of the weights off. Right, so this was the first one that we did. Let's have a look and see what effect we've got. Pretty cool. What do you think, guys? Now we managed to get a little bit of colour mixing going on here. Now this one had bobbled on the stamp. If you remember, it didn't look like the stamp was covered, but once you put it down, you get a really lovely effect. Okay, let's see if the mermaid markers and the echo line have worked, because these ones are new to me and I have no idea if they're going to have worked or not. Okay, let's have a look. Let's see if this one has worked at all and what kind of effect we've got. Are you ready? Oh, not too bad. Not too bad at all. That's actually worked kind of more diffused than the other one. Right, let's have a look at the clear stamp and see how that one has worked. And we can see a little bit through the stamp itself. Ooh, look at that. That's quite pretty. I like that. Oh, now it's still a little bit wet here where the paint was, so we could possibly have left that one on a bit longer. And before I forget, let me just write down what we used on this one. So we had watercolour paint in this corner. This corner was the Echo Line pen. So that leaf there, and you've got a little bit of the paint has gone into that as well, so there's some mixing going on. And then this corner was the mermaid marker. Okay, now we've done that, I want to set up another one where we encourage the colours to actually colour mix, and because this one has worked so beautifully, I really like that one, I think we're going to go with that one again. So let's try that. And what I want to do this time is make sure that my first wash is really quite damp. So I'm going to have to work really fast this time to make sure it is damp. So I've got everything ready that I need, and I'm going to add some water to my paint, get that going, try and get as much pigment onto this square of water of paper as I can get on there. So let's load up the brush, and what I might do is I might squeeze out some of the water from the brush so I can just load it with pigment. So I've got a nice pigment load. Okay, I will clean my brush in a minute. Let's go straight in with a blue. I'm going to use a different blue this time. Load that up, work it over my surface as quickly as I can. So I can't really see if I'm getting it on all of the stamp, but we'll just go with it. And so this is damp and this has dried a little bit. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just lightly spray it. And then put that on top. And we need something heavy. So go with this and this. And we'll do another timing. Whilst I go and wash my brushes. Okay, let's see how this one worked. Ooh, looks pretty cool, doesn't it? And you get some colour mixing there. So, I've now shown you 2 different ways to use this and different products you can try it out with. There's one more thing I want to try, so let's have a go at that. Okay, so at the beginning I did say this is to do more with texture plates than with rubber stamping or any kind of stamping. So this printing technique, all it needs is some sort of texture, as you've seen. And we've used stamps and they work really, really well. But let's have a go with another form of texture plate. And I've got an embossing folder here, and it's just another example of what you can use. So we're going to do exactly the same thing as we did before. So I just want to put down a good sized wash with lots of pigment. I'm going to make it about the size of the folder. So, and then just as we did before, I will use some paint. So I don't want it too wet. So I'm going to put a bit with paint. I want to get some nice pigment on there. Let's see how this goes. A bit with paint. Let's then have a go with the Echo liner brush. And again, I'm trying to do this reasonably fast so that things don't dry out. And then do with the mermaid marker. And this time I'm going to, oh, I've splattered already. And this time I'm going to do the second technique, was just to have the surface re-wetted a little bit. So spray that on, then I'm going to put that, hold it in place until I can get a weight on top. Try not to nudge it. And then put something nice and heavy to keep it in place. And we will do 30 minutes again. Right, 30 minutes later, let's have a look and see what we got. Much more diffused this time. I added quite a lot of water to the surface. So very interesting to see that the Echo line has diffused out really interestingly. So I think my personal favourite might be the paint on this one. But I'll have a play with that and see how it goes for you. So this works particularly well with your watercolours, so your watercolour paints, your dye-based watercolours like in the pens we were using. And you don't want to be using your acrylic paints, because acrylic paints, when they dry, they become much more like a glue, so you don't want to stick your texture plate to the paper. Now, with this technique, you can try out different timings. So we used the 30-minute time point for this demonstration, but have a look here at what happens after 5 minutes. So this is something I did earlier with a rubber stamp again. After 5 minutes, it's very diffused. And you go up to 15 minutes, you're starting to see more detail here, but it's still quite diffused. And if we have a look at after 30 minutes, which was what we were using today, and you get a lot more detail, so it's a nice happy medium. And after an hour, look at after an hour. And even with the watercolour, you can get a little bit of it sticking to the paper when it dries, and you just have to peel it off really, really carefully. It shouldn't be permanent, which if you're using acrylic, then it would be more likely to be permanent and you damage the paper as you pull it off. I hope you enjoyed watching that watercolour printing technique and that you have fun playing around with it. Now it's one of those ones where you're never quite sure what you're going to get from it until you've peeled off the texture plate, so there's a little bit of serendipity, but you can experiment with, you know, how wet the surfaces are, what colours you use, how long you keep the products together, all of these sorts of things, so have fun with it. And I'm going to do some more about this technique and I'll put it up on YouTube, but you guys got it first. Now of course when you use this technique and you put them up on social media, I would love to see, so don't forget to tag me in and also put it up on the community board as well so we can all have a look. Thanks for joining me in the studio again today, and I will catch you all later.